Good morning, good day, and good evening. I'm, as always, your host, Brady Robertson, and this, I believe, is episode 4? Yes, episode 4 of the post-AvCon discussions. There's a lot more to go, so hang around for those, I guess. Today we have Leo and Jackson from Paper Cactus Games, the developers of Fox and Shadow, a roguelite deck builder that you've probably seen games like Slay the Spire. It seems quite similar to that, but I think it's best if you guys describe it and if you feel like that's an accurate description.
Yeah. Well, hi, I'm Leo, and obviously my friend over there is Jacko. But that's pretty accurate. Like, our game was heavily influenced by games like Slay the Spy and Griftlands, but we decided to throw in our own little twist. We wanted to give the players a lot more control, and so we implemented what we call as a dual deck system. The idea is that we have a human and a robot. The robot provides the base cards, whereas the human changes how these cards work.
Mhm.
So it's like, I like to make the comparison of you've got one model of car.
Mhm.
If you put a nervous driver behind the wheel, it's very different to putting a very angry driver behind the wheel. There's one that you'd obviously not want to be driving with. But the idea is that you get these two cards, they mix and match, and they do things that the robot couldn't otherwise do with human input.
Okay. That's cool. Jackson, you want to introduce yourself before we get way into the actual game itself? We just forgot to
Yeah, that's
introduce
me.
you.
I'm Jackson. I do a bunch of the programming basically. That'd be my main focus. And help out with a bunch of production work on the game. So yeah, between the two of us, there gets to cover more the game design, the art kind of side of things, and then we also have many other people working on the team as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, so that's me. And yeah, it's a really fun project to be working on. So yeah.
So if I understand correctly, you were the mastermind behind this starting?
Oh, that'd be Leo.
Oh, that's Leo. Okay,
Leo,
sorry, I
Yeah.
misunderstood.
Leo had the
Well,
initial idea,
Okay,
but
okay.
actually, I'll let you tell the story, Leo.
Yeah, well, actually, I guess our conversation about Paper Cactus Games and Fox and Shadow really started at a wedding. We were dealing with a pretty hectic wedding. A lot of things were happening. A lot of things needed help. Jackson was part of the groom's bridal party, and I was there as as a friend, and also my wife was a part of the bridal party as well. We ended up running around a lot, getting everything sorted, and the morning afterwards, we just decided to start talking, and we both happened to have I guess passion for game design. We started talking about what kind of games we make, and I guess that's where we started talking about Fox and Shadow.
Yeah, definitely. It was one of those ones where we both saw that each other were people who would okay, we'll be hands on when stuff needs to get done. We're not just going to leave it be by the wayside. And yeah, in addition to that, just Leo having that kind of vision for the Fox and Shadow dual deck building system, kind of just as I was wrapping up some work I was doing at Adelaide Uni as kind of there was some defense research, an open source project that was going on there at the time, and I was wrapping up with that. So I was like, oh, okay, games, it's hectic. Everybody knows, do we let the game development thing? It's hectic. Do I really want to get into this? And I was like, yeah, I just can't let this idea go by. It was too good, too attractive. I was like, yeah, let's do it.
So did either of you have prior experience with game development before, or was this we're just going to jump right into it?
Jack will go first, and then I'll follow up.
Yeah, so I have kind of been making games on and off since high school, I guess. They threw Game Maker at us for one lesson, I think, in middle school or something like that. And then promptly switched back to PowerPoint because that's what you do in an IT class, I guess. And that left me wanting something shocking. So I just kind of sat there making all these games and really enjoying that. And then coming out of uni eventually after kind of doing a bit of a computer science degree there, I ended up kind of founding a company with some other friends at the time coming out of uni called Crown Games. So we made, Greg's Adventure, kind of mini golf game where you roll an egg around a maze and then it only has a number of bounces until it cracks. You won't be able to find it on the App Store anymore. We've taken it off since. It was our first game and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we got to do kind of a bunch of cool stuff there, and we tried to really went from like really small to like really big when we tried to effectively make like Diablo for the phone. Was our next game after that. So
right, okay.
We had ambitions.
So you made the indie game dev, I'm gonna make an MMO mistake, or it's like this project's way too big. What are we doing?
Yeah, effectively, we just kept like pivoting until we tried to like find the fun, and we eventually found like we were like, oh, this is going to be a good game now. We're like here, but we're also like, what's the scope for us making it? We got a bunch of offers for like money to help us with making it, and then we went, I don't think it's responsible for us to do that. So I mean, there's a fair bit more to that story, but for the sake of time, yeah, like that's kind of some of my past experience there. And then, yeah, went out and worked, decided like, okay, going in and actually working as part of a software dev team in like a setup environment would probably be really good for just like acquiring those kind of skills. And that was really, actually really good for that. And so, yeah, then here I am now bringing that all to Paper Cactus.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's me and my experience.
My path is kind of different. I've got no formal training with illustrations or video game design or whatnot. I actually started out as a dentist. So
that's a new one. Okay.
So basically, I studied and I was doing art as a hobby. I was joining comic tournaments like Artists at the Ready, and basically honing and learning my craft there through, I guess, osmosis of being around other creatives. Then around 2020, I developed a tabletop RPG called Parslings. I also did I did all the game design, I did all the illustrations, I did a lot of the marketing, and I had that published. And I picked up other work here and there, doing graphic design and layouts for other tabletop RPGs like The Wild Sea, which did very well for itself. I think a couple of years back it won the Ennies, like a tabletop RPG award. So by the time I met Jacko again after many years of basically no contact, I had started to shift out of the desire to be a dentist, and it happened that COVID had just kind of messed around with the healthcare community. I was having my own issues with my eyes, and then along came Jacko, who also wanted to change. That's where I started jumping into the project. So it was very much a big step and a big change for me, but I don't regret it one bit.
Well, it sounds like you had the idea before you guys started speaking. So where did that idea actually come from?
Well, I guess it sort of spawned off of a couple of different ideas. It spawned off story ideas that I had back in 2012. Some concepts there. I always liked talking about the themes of isolation and how people interact and how people change things. The whole idea of combining different things and how tools can evolve based on who used them. I had also been previously working with my tabletop RPG, the whole idea of like combinatorial word magic that will involve lots of different people. So I kind of got sick of drawing just people, and I wanted to go back to my true passion of just drawing robots. I have it's a really bad habit and almost addiction to drawing robots. So I wanted to do something sci-fi. I wanted to do something robots, and that's where I started thinking about this idea. I can't say when it really solidified. I think I was very much just designing in my head as I went.
Right.
Until I met Jacko.
Okay. Well, I think we should just be fair in there. There's not just you guys in the team as well. We couldn't obviously have everyone because it would be way too many people here.
Yeah.
But if you want to just briefly go over the other people involved in Paper Cactus as well, just before we get into anything else.
So we've got another programmer dealing with our UI. The name is Lynette, is it? Lynette Van Veen just recently.
No,
you may know them more as staff if you're part of the community. The name has changed recently, so that's the context there.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. They just recently went through some changes, and they are changing their names. So they're an old childhood friend of mine. So I've known them since almost prep, very, very young. And we have been in contact. We have a lot of things in common with games and anime. And they were shifting out of another career, BWS, like a retail, more or less. But they had studied some game design early on in their studies. We also have an environmental artist, Chris Hill, who was a graduate of architecture when I knew them. And they also decided that they wanted to have a little bit of shift in careers. So they very much became a 3D environmental artist, talked about environments with us, talked about a lot of layout and whatnot. And they're also hoping to do a bit of work in film as well in the future. We have Zenas, an old comic friend of mine, working on narrative with us. They also act as my second head when it comes to art. So they provide me with a lot of feedback. They provide me with a lot of assistance, and they've got a very good grasp of how stories are told.
Okay.
And then we have John Ostman, who is also known as Soundworlds in some circles, and he's worked on numerous projects as a sound designer and composer.
So you might know some of them as like Rooftop Renegades is one of them. He'll also be doing some work for Tower Point, and
that name rings a bell. Rooftop Renegades.
Yeah. That was a Melonheads game.
I don't think I've played it, but I definitely know the name. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, you would have seen it around a little bit. It was by Pat Webb. Who, just recently was heading up like some of the SAFC games stuff. So that was very cool to have him actually be a dev and then go in and be kind of in that government support role to help other people with that knowledge. Yeah,
right. And then there's one more listed on here, Andrew.
Andrew is also another childhood friend of Lynn and I. They're working as our web designer and helping us spruce up the website and whatnot. I do believe there's also one more member that isn't listed on there currently. Jack, you would like to?
So we've recently had Vinci join us. So Vinci Chan has joined us to help out with some of the kind of advertising, social media, mainly the social media side of things, and help poor nerds like me who can't manage that by my own apparently, and keep us on track, all that kind of stuff.
That seems to be a consistent theme with everyone I talk to, unless they specifically have an interest in social media or they have a team and have a social media guy. Oftentimes that part tends to just get kind of left to the wayside.
I mean, there's just so many things to focus on. Like, I mean, Leo, you could probably speak to this much better than I, but like, God knows, too much.
I can say from marketing my own game previously, it takes a lot of effort and it becomes about 50 to 90% of the job, which leaves very little time for game development and all the other tasks.
The fun things.
Initially, I was initially I was going to be doing some of the marketing or most of it, but then my tasks grew a lot heavier as we started to evolve as a company and we started needing to talk to publishers and organizing grants and funding, essentially, that I couldn't also take on the load of marketing. That, and I had my first child last year, which drastically changed my time.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like basically nobody in the team has like formal game design training. It's just like there's programming knowledge, obviously, and there's music knowledge and some art knowledge and some background in other things related to like writing, but nobody has like formal training in specifically how to apply these skills into game design.
No, and I don't. I'm not actually super worried about it. In fact, I almost really kind of enjoy the diversity of backgrounds there, because it is one of those ones where I think that a lot of where games, and it's not to minimize the game design or the formal training that's there, but some of that like core inspirational work of like, okay, yeah, cool, we could add these techniques and like this game design aspect to things in various places, but those inspiration sources being so varied and all those different like aspects coming into it, I think is a really important aspect of what we can hopefully as a company bring that's like new to all of the video game market that is, you know, booming. There's like plenty of devs. But yeah, so no formal training. I've obviously worked on some in the past, so I've definitely got exposure there. Right. But yeah, and I think even with Leo, you know, having the kind of Pass Links tabletop RPG stuff, that gives you that real iterative sense of working with players to get that kind of back and forth of like, oh, cool, I don't understand what's going on here. Oh, this doesn't really feel fun. You know, like all those kind of like hands-on learning experiences are really cool.
I honestly think that also not having a formal training has been actually a little bit of a benefit because we're not stuck into very similar thought patterns that come out of what universities and other courses will teach you. It means that we've learned a lot by osmosis from our community, taking bits where we found it useful for our own processes. So it's a lot of evolving thing.
Well, I wasn't bringing that up to say that like the formal game design stuff isn't important, but the reason I bring it up is because you don't need to go through some long course to learn how to do game design. If you want to do it, there's so much resources out there that already exist for free that you can pick it up through other means. You can migrate from other areas. Like if you've got programming knowledge, like you did defense stuff, if you've got programming knowledge in some other area, you can migrate those skills over to something else and actually work on something and just get started on doing the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think like to put it simply, I think you're basically there with like, just do a thing. Yeah. Like the key one from I think me for growing up was like the making games thing when I had like something that was finally accessible at the level of where I was at, which was Game Maker. Like I knew nothing about code or anything like that. I used the kind of drag and drop interface to do things. And I didn't want to touch code. I was like, it seems painful, tedious, whatever. And then I realized, it's like going to literally be the only way I can solve this particular problem I have. All right. 2 lines of code. I'll just do 2 lines of code and like just working in through that and like gradually building up. I think, yeah, by the time I got to university, like the amount we were taught at school for programming was kind of like always basically behind where I ended up teaching myself because I was just enjoying it. And so by the time I got to university, I was like, oh no, this is the big league now. Like I might need to actually do some prep study for this. Like went and tried to teach myself C++. I was like, oh man, this stuff looks like a bit hard. And then accidentally got like carried away in like me being worried about what it was going to be like, and like basically taught myself the first semester before we started university because I just kind of got used to self-starting in that way. And once you build that habit, if you can, and everybody's got their own ways of approaching stuff, but I think if you apply that to game dev, then you've got that skill now for whatever other career you might want in programming or, animation or whatever your field is. So yeah, definitely just jump in and have a go at things.
So I know it's been an idea since before the game actually started, but how long ago did it start where like the first line of code was written, the first bit of art was done, like the first formal start of the project? Like how long has it actually been in development for?
I reckon if I had to put a date on it, Leo, you can jump in because a lot of it was like very like, talking about the idea back and forthing it a bit. But I reckon it'd probably be in 2021, I'd say. Yeah.
2021. I did reuse some of my old art concepts that I have stashed away, but I solidified them with Jacko probably around 2021 for realsies, more or less. That's when we actually intended to make an actual video game.
So what is the state of the game now? And what was actually shown at AvCon? Is that like a vertical slice? Is that like a core system of the game that you just wanted to test out? Like, is that the combat alpha that was mentioned on the website, or is that something separate?
No, so that particular thing that's shown there is basically what we're calling like a bit of a pre-alpha. we've been kind of very keen on running into like AvCon and various other conventions and showing off what we do have to get that player feedback. Maybe we can go into that a little bit later. But yeah, at this point in time, we don't consider it to be the vertical slice. There's a bunch of features there that we are very excited about and that we don't currently have in that build. And we're super keen to like actually finally get them in there and get players' hands on them. So yeah, we'll be having like a kind of community alpha. We've done the kind of pre-selection for that and getting a bunch of people in to help us test out those final combat features, some of which wouldn't have been at the AvCon live demo. And then after that, we'll be having a narrative kind of out where we look at some of the more like longer term meta progression that's in the game and really let people get a hands on with that once we feel like it's at that level.
Okay. So before we get too much into anything else, what is the premise of the game? Like, what is the setting? Like, what's the style you're going for here?
So I guess Fox and Shadow is set in this post-apocalyptic world where the environment's more or less being ruined. People have been forced underground into cryostations, and an AI kind of runs things. And over time, while humans have been asleep, copies and variants of them have kind of taken to the surface and grown separate from their original program and kind of taken over the city. So construction of a haven for people have kind of been, it's like it was started but never really finished. So what's happened is that AI has realized, okay, there's some things that I need humans to actually get sorted, to get done, to make sure that they can survive these unforeseen circumstances. And so they start working out the humans, the foxes, to sort of bring back materials, bring back scrap to sort of help them finish the job. So that's the very high level premise.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of the background and setting for the world. And so you kind of jump into being one of those pilots, effectively, one of those foxes, who is then kind of given a bit of agency to go out and pilot a drone throughout this outside world and bring back the bits of scrap that are needed to like kind of keep the habitat you're in running. And that's the kind of core motivation for the player. But then, you know, many things unfold in this world up on the surface and in all other parts of it that, you know, you'll get to experience as the game goes on.
So with I assume there's going to be some sort of world building as you're going through the game. How is the story planning to be told? Is it going to be through like encounters you have in the world? Is it going to be through some more explicit cutscenes after doing certain events, beating certain high-level creatures? Like, what's the approach here?
The approach is sort of twofold. So what we have in our, I guess, roguelike run is that you've got the pilot, they select a robot, it goes to the surface. It encounters a lot of different other kind of rambling and broken down AI that have kind of developed their own personality. And you get to see how the world happens through that lens. The different emotions, the different behaviors that are imparted on the robot changes what stories that you get to see through these events. And then when the drone gets home or when it inevitably fails, we jump back to the burrows where all the pilots are kind of living in isolated little pods. And they're having exchanges with the overarching management AI and the other the foxes in the character select screen, talking about their experiences. And we wanted to kind of evoke sort of like a Hades-inspired dialogue where, depending on how the things that you achieve on your runs, the narrative, the story changes, and you sort of hear little snippets. So we're aiming for a very slow burn piece of narrative where it happens over multiple sessions.
Right. So if I'm imagining it right with like the Hades-like system, so if you get to a certain point, you beat some like big boss, get to another section, and then you lose after that, like people in that area will then comment on what you had previously done there.
Yeah, more or less. So while we're not going to be going with a free roaming area like Hades does, it will be more or less chat dialogues that do pop up, and they respond to things that you have achieved, bosses that you've killed, materials that you've brought back.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, definitely creating that kind of like sense of a responsive world that you're a part of, rather than that kind of very stale like, oh, okay, and rinse and repeat roguelike. We want to get that sense of like, okay, things are happening. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a system I really do like from Hades. I understand it's obviously like a complex system because there is a lot of writing involved in that, and I'm sure there is a lot of complexity from the programming side on that as well, and making sure you have events triggering from certain things, and then what do you do if you have multiple events trigger that lead to two different dialogue options? Like, one example in Hades is if you beat Hades on the first run, like there will be specific dialogue that you only see on that run. Like little things like that, which maybe it's not important. Maybe most people won't see it, but if someone does run across that, it's like, oh, this is like a neat little thing that most people just don't even know is here.
Yeah. It's all those little edge cases, and like that one as well is kind of like it goes almost to like the heart of game development, like the kind of like, oh, if I did have this case, you're thinking about it and thinking like, I would want something, for that. Yeah, it's that kind of aspect, and yeah, it's one of those ones where as a studio, particularly as a first game, like credit to those guys, like they've honed their craft now and they've put out a masterpiece, and so we're going, okay, cool. Where can we like put our efforts into, and like also make sure that if we don't quite do it the right way the first time, we have the chance to like iterate on it and like go, okay, yeah, I think we're good with this now. So we've set ourselves a tough ask, but we're really enjoying doing it. So yeah, looking forward to how everybody else finds it, because yeah, if they enjoyed it half as much as we are, then we're in a good place.
Well, from the programming side, if implementing a system like that, like what actually goes into that? Like how are you approaching it? Because there's probably a bunch of different ways you could realistically make this work, but like how are you guys looking at it?
Yeah, so for that one, there's kind of like a two-tiered aspect of it. One of the bits that's kind of like a bit more solidified is some of the script, like story scripting stuff. So inside an individual scenario or an encounter or something like that, to try to help with artists being able to like designers and narrative designers being able to visualize what's actually going on in a scene. I ended up using a visual scripting style system to try to like help that sense of flow of like different pathways and branching possibilities. And so that's kind of within one particular scenario. And then at the higher level, there's basically kind of effectively like a series of checks and like a filter on prioritizing what should show preferentially as like a thing that can pop up, but also a certain amount of like random choice within bands of, okay, these events are like available to at this point in time, and we want to make sure it's not completely algorithmic in what the player is seeing, so that there is that sense of, oh, like I will just encounter stuff, and because of the whim of fate, like we're going down this path now. So yeah, you want to make sure that as much as you can create this like beautiful system for it, like you still preserve that sense of chance and discovery. Yeah. And on that note, it's actually really cool when you start like doing the architectural design and like going through those things to kind of be able to refer back to gameplay design principles, like the pillars of gameplay. So we wanted meaningful choices and discovery as like two of our key pillars there. So kind of be able to make sure that I hold both of those as we're like developing that system really helps.
Okay, so I'm sure that having a system like this adds a lot of interesting work when it comes to like doing the writing, and then if you want to have like different art that shows up in these different segments as well, like it adds a lot of additional work there to make it not feel like you're just seeing the same thing over and over again. It's like it's cool to have a system like this, but if it basically just says the same thing but in like a slightly, it's like a cookie cutter, hey, you beat this thing, hey, you beat this thing, like, yeah, it's okay, sure, whatever, but like if you want it to be an actual like unique thing that it feels cool to discover, I'm sure that takes a lot of additional effort to really feel meaningful.
Yeah, and there's always going to be bits where you kind of reach the end of what's humanly possible with the people and like the manpower you have available.
Right.
So
You got to release something
you've probably
eventually.
seen it in Hades as well, right? Like, you get that like kind of same piece of, okay, you've talked to me a million times before, and you can talk to me another million times. We can't keep writing dialogue for this.
Right.
So you just have to kind of trust that the players, kind of understand that, there's like limits thing. I don't know, unless people want to go down the whole generative AI route for things, which is a whole another ballpark. Not one that we're exploring for this game. So that's like, I guess, the potential solution to that problem ultimately. But I think for us, like, the crafted experience is still pretty important.
Yeah, I see what you're saying about the generative AI stuff. Like, I've seen some games that have explored it. There's this like detective game. I don't remember what it was called. You play like some like, I think it was like a robot detective or something. Is like there's like there's like I don't remember the exact premise, but you like go around to these different people, asking them like, oh, what happened to this scene? What happened with this? And being generative AI, like, you can just ask them stupid things, and the guards they have in place are reasonable, but like any system, you can get around the guards and just start asking them really stupid things like, hey, what did you have for breakfast? Like, it's just like, it has nothing to do with the game, and like, you just see what they do with it. But yeah, like, if you want to have an actual like good, well-crafted experience, like, we're nowhere near the point where it's good enough to like build an entire game around where you actually want to have a consistent narrative. Like, if you're fine with haha funny equals random equals funny, sure, it works well enough, but it's not gonna handle like, you have a set world that you're building here and you want to actually make it make sense.
Yeah, I think I remember a friend describing them playing that that demo, and they were saying even like trying to like stay within the bounds of like what the experience actually was meant to be. There were, a bunch of places where it was kind of like, running around. So, who knows? Maybe like, fingers crossed that gets worked out a bit, and all like the other kind of issues around that kind of stuff gets worked out a bit as well. No, for the moment we'll accept our failings as mere mortals and keep soldiering on.
So, with this being a roguelite deck builder, like, this is obviously not the first roguelite deck builder. There's a lot of roguelike deck builders. It's one of the more popular roguelike categories right now. What are you guys okay, what is like the core system? And then how are you guys trying to do something different? Like, how does the deck building work? How does moving around the zones work? Like, what sort of system do you have to go between different encounters? And yeah, just generally, like, if you're in a run, what are you doing?
So, more or less, with us, I'll start from the high level. A lot of games, when you kill an enemy, they're simply out of the fight. And taking inspiration from Darkest Dungeons, I decided to design in a slightly different route. So when you defeat the enemies, their bodies still remain on the field. Okay. Now, this allows players opportunity to continue attacking these foes if they wish so. The more damage you deal to an enemy, the more the body breaks down, and that changes the types of rewards you get. So if you reduce an enemy's HP exactly to 0, you get some pretty neat cards, more powerful versions. Cards that have special properties, modifiers that have been attached to them. But if you decide to go overboard and deal excessive damage, you get more scrap or money. And you also get more broken down cards that are filled with the viruses. So it becomes a choice of the player to decide, do I want a lot of money or do I want more powerful cards? And that comes at a crossroads of choice. It's very much a choice that the player can actively choose to make to determine how they want to approach the run. Because there are a couple different layers to this. There's, as I said, the two types of decks. We've got the behavior cards, which relate to the pilots and their emotions, and we've got the directive cards, which relate to the robot. In combat, really, you can only use the directive cards, but out of combat, you can affix the human cards to the robot cards to change how moves work. So we've got our basic attack, which is called Leap, and that does 6 damage. If we add a card that says a card for our first character, the hotshot that says Insult, it becomes deal 6 damage and add 2 weak to the enemy. Whereas if we add something called Brave, it becomes hit, deal 6 damage to all enemies. Now, the complexity builds from here in the fact that you are given the choice to mix and match between these cards. So rather than being offered at the end of a fight a simple choice of 3 cards, you're really given the choice of what you need next. So you're given a choice of either the behavior cards or the directive cards that are unfused. You go out and then you can fuse them afterwards, and each combination leads to a unique type of card. So from here, players get a lot of choice. They can build cards as they like. The next stage of that is where inevitably you'll pick up duplicate cards. At certain points on the map, you'll be able to fuse or refine duplicate cards into a more powerful version of the card. So a lot of the game becomes a choice of when do I combine my cards? When do I refine my cards? What do I want? And then additionally, with this, each encounter has a little bit of story. We've got narrative, which is told from the AI, the management AI's perspective. But then there's also text. Sometimes it's garbled, sometimes it's different. That is being spoken to the player by the kind of corrupted rogue robots. And the more viruses you collect, this is a feature that we hope to add. We'll see how things go. The text will slowly unravel and give you a different type of story. And with our map navigation, we've chosen for a more free approach, where you're giving basically a set of map tiles where you can freely navigate around, exploring from tile to tile, which means that you can spend as long as you want in a single act, or as short as you want. You can simply rush to the boss. The longer you spend, obviously, the more resources you gather, but also the more harder enemies pop up.
Right, I was going to ask if there was any drawback to sticking around, because otherwise, like, there would like be no reason not to just grind out each act and just be like really powerful for the next one.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you might have played Risk of Rain at all, potentially.
I played it
really good
years ago. I haven't played Risk of Rain 2, but I did play the original one.
Oh, Risk of Rain, yeah, Risk of Rain 2, great. So like the kind of like sense of, okay, as time is going on, everything's getting that little bit harder, and it's the part of the balancing act for the game is really that like tension of, okay, am I like geared up enough to go to the next place yet? Or am I hanging around too long? What am I doing? Am I just sitting here farming? Oh, that's going to make my life so much harder.
Right.
So yeah, letting players kind of pick that strategic midline and see what suits them is kind of a bit of what we're hoping to go down for that over map screen. And we've kind of got a bit of a threat system that, like, the more stuff you're doing in the world, the more kind of things are starting to notice you and come online and wanting to deal with you. And that kind of, plays into a bunch of the narrative aspect of the game then as well.
So with the system of it getting harder, is this based on like actual time, or is it based on the number of tiles you go across?
It's based on a couple of different factors, and we've got, like, tuning parameters for all the little ways. So, like, whether or not you choose to defeat your enemies, whether you go into the kind of like have a chat with the merchant and buy some stuff from him, all, like, there's a bunch of little factors that are all there contributing their own little bits and pieces to this like threat score system that's going on in the background to kind of see, okay, cool, where are we putting you at the moment in terms of like how much everything is like kind of coming at you.
Is the player going to have any indication of like the current threat level, or is that just something entirely happening in the background?
We want to give them an indication of the overall threat level currently. We're open to workshopping this and getting feedback from people. But we want to kind of stay away from like any single, like, like it being distilled down to some like single number that people just go, oh, my threat level is currently, exact thing to the decimal point.
Right,
this
is your star level in GTA.
Yeah, it's meant to be, kind of like maybe like, low, medium, high, catastrophic, like really, if I was going to pick between that or the risk of like range system, like that kind of like sense of like, oh, like a very qualitative description of what's going on would be cool. So like cruisy, like undetected, or up to hell has broken loose,
Right.
like that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we want to give players enough information to make meaningful choices. Everything is about what the player wants to do and how they want to approach things.
So they can balance like whether they think it makes sense to keep going, or okay, I know I'm not going to survive going up to the next tier. Like I need to get out of here now.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Or have them get to like kind of potentially plan ahead a little bit and start to think about, oh, if I am going to go and cause a bunch of noise, then is that going to make my life harder? Am I geared right for doing that? Yeah, all those kind of little trade-offs. Just kind of, it's one of those ones where we're also saying meaningful choice, but we're retaining a little bit of ambiguity just to make it so that, if you have all the information, it actually takes away from your meaningful choice, because you can kind of plan a very optimized, like, okay, this is it. This is the exact thing. And in some circumstances, that's cool. But if it's like every single time there's just like a single answer for whatever it is, and you don't have to make some kind of meaningful decision about what you're doing next, then it can kind of take away from that spirit a bit. So really making it so that your intuition as a player and your choice of strategy is going to be the thing that gets you through is one of the aims.
So across the nodes that you've already cleared out, so you've like beat enemies here. Okay, question 1 is, can you go back across those nodes? And question 2 is, if you can, are those nodes safe going back across, or may something happen if you go back to a previous one?
So the idea is that when you traverse through nodes you've already been through, they're typically safe.
Typically.
However, our elites, the really hard enemies, we want them to roam around the map. And the longer you spend on the map, the more of them that appear, and the faster they move towards you. So, yes, the towers are safe, TM. They're safe until they're not safe anymore.
Okay.
But players will have a very easy indicator to say, okay, this is now a hotspot. I need to avoid this, or, I could lose.
Okay. So the reason I asked that is because if you're like, if the threat system had gotten too high, and you're like, okay, I need to like rush to where the exit was, like you cleared out a path to the exit to the next act. Assuming there was no elites along that path, you could just zoom back up along that path and get to the end.
Yeah. More or less.
Yeah. Assuming nothing jumps in the way as you're doing that. Yeah. There are a variety of things that might be able to happen there. And that's one of the things that, we don't want to put all the cards on the table necessarily. But yeah, like things might, the world doesn't necessarily stay the same while you're just pottering around doing whatever you want to do.
It's safer, but not guaranteed to be safe.
Yeah.
Okay, right. That makes sense. So, okay, what sort of nodes are going to exist along the map? You mentioned there's the merchants, there's like I saw the regular encounters, and then there's like elites. Anything else that's going to be notable that you want to mention?
Yeah, so
the bosses,
we also have...
well. Yeah.
So, at any point in time, you're kind of trying to find your way to these like elevators or ways to get downwards through the city. So starting on the surface layer of the city, kind of bringing back some of the scrap that's up there, working your way through down lower and lower to where your pilots are sequestered. And that's the kind of like things get continually more spicy there. So you want to get to one of those access tiles that allows you to go down through the elevator. So things like that. And there are a couple of other different methods that we're tossing up for allowing people to do that at the moment, which are very cool. And so in addition to that, one of the kind of features that Leah was talking about earlier was the ability to refine cards, so to get 2 of the same cards and add them together. So there are workshops that you can find throughout the city that have like just this little bit of charge left in them. They're not very well maintained or anything like that, but you can kind of go in there and take 2 of those cards together and fuse them, so it kind of like ends up with a reduced cost card or like a more effective card. And that is like something really valuable for the players to kind of go across. It's like a little bit of a power spike if you can kind of find your way to one of those. They also let you like kind of repair your drone a bit as well, which is very, very useful. So yeah, those are kind of like some really key points of interest. for players to kind of head across. And then there's various kind of, I don't know, encounter tiles, and you could be like narrative events that are in those. There could be just kind of things that are going to more or less be very hard to not just be straight up battles. So those are the kind of stock standard ones. Unless there's any more tiles you want to talk about, Leo, that I might have skipped over.
Can you talk about what other things you can do with the merchant besides buying?
Oh, no, that's a good point.
Yeah, so and then high concept of the game is that you're scrapping robots to get cash. So it also makes sense that the merchant can take some of your HP to turn into money as well. So if you have something that you really want to buy, you can start selling parts of your drone. It's up to you in the end whether or not you can make it all the way home without that missing HP. So the merchant becomes a sort of locus for us to buy additional plates, get additional money if we need it, and also find rarer mods on cards as well. I think that's the main thing that Jacko hadn't talked about. So yeah, it's very much a resource-focused game. Very much about time as a resource, money as a resource, HP as a resource. It's, yeah.
So when you get to the end of an act, what happens then? I assume when you beat the boss there, you get some sort of like special card for beating the boss. Like it'll probably better rolls than you get on normal things. But is there anything special that happens before you go down to the next act? Is there like a point to heal? Is there a point to combine cards, or anything else special that happens there?
Or do you want to answer that one?
Okay, sorry. So right now, what we are contemplating is putting like a little elevator scene where you essentially go down the city. You go from the top layer to the layer that's kind of the wasteland, the one that's being exposed to the sun or the harsh environments, then to the second layer, which is like the city that was meant to be built for humans but kind of taken over by drones. And then the third layer is where your pilots live, more or less. But in between each one, we want a little elevator scene where you can either upgrade cards or buy cards, have a visit from the merchant. And this is probably a feature that we're still debating about. Just because the city is kind of tiered like this, we were considering having little voids or like holes where your robot can jump down and fight a series of harder fights, but go straight down to the next level.
Okay, that's cool.
It provides a different sort of choice for the players and also lets them, take a gamble on what is happening next.
Okay.
It's one of those ones where a lot of the bits and pieces here are us being like, this is a cool idea. I think the best way to find out is to like put it in front of players and see what they do with it. Right. And like we internally play test it and like all that kind of stuff, and then be like, okay, the final judge is the players. And that's the kind of stuff where I think it kind of almost comes back to that point before of being able to attend like conventions and like stuff like that and see what happens when somebody sits down at the game in front of you. Because like doing remote testing is cool as well, and like very necessary and all that kind of stuff. But there's something like very, very neat and very visceral about being able to just see somebody who's just walked in through from a con and just like sat down there and have them go, I have no idea what's going on here, or oh man, that's sick, I love this so much. And then you just go, wow, okay, I never thought somebody would like gravitate so much towards that little system. Like let's keep going with that. Those are the really like cool moments. They keep you going as a developer.
Honestly, going to events is actually really important because your testers aren't biased towards your genre. You get a lot of people that you don't expect to play your game, and you can sort of gauge whether or not your game design holds up for even people that aren't fans of the genre or have never heard of this genre. Because like the moment we say deck building roguelite, we either get the response of, oh, Slay the Spire, or I have no idea what that is. It's just how iconic Slay the Spire is. But it also lets us get data on blind playthroughs where the Congos don't necessarily talk to us. We may be busy with other people, but we're always listening. We always see what they do. We get to see what habits form, whether or not people decide to just rush straight to the boss, go back and forth, trying to farm all the tiles, or they're trying to make the perfect deck before before tackling the harder enemies. It informs us of what theories we have behind player motivations, player tactics, and gives us physical data on how they emerge without us interfering or spoiling the data. So it's really important to go do these events.
So
yeah, big shout out to AvCon and all those kind of events for helping put it together.
Well, I saw that you guys were at Sage earlier in the year as well, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
absolutely. Very cool to have that up and running for like 2 years in a row now.
I have not had a chance to go. I was going to go this year, and I forgot that it was in February, so I've not had a chance to go just yet.
It's rough. Yeah,
I didn't realize it was. It's part of the Fringe, and I didn't realize the Fringe was happening until the last day of the Fringe. I completely forgot about it.
Yeah, it can be like that a bit, hey. Yeah, so many cool things, so many things you plan to go and do, and then life gets in the way.
Yeah.
No, it's been very cool to have Sage kind of pop up as like something where the government's actually like really getting in behind the industry and supporting things in that way. So just huge thanks to them for doing that. That's happening at all levels. So like state level, federal level with Screen Australia, helping with a bunch of funding, and then even like local council, City of Adelaide has been really cool to us as well. So big shout to all of them. But like having those events that can kind of bring people in is both really good for us, but like I remember at Sage a lot as well. There's like all these kind of kids coming through looking at like a future career in games or something like that, and they kind of get to see things they can aim for and like have people that we can say, oh yeah, like keep following like this path, or okay, like here's some stuff you should know, or like be able to impart that kind of wisdom a little bit maybe. And it's very cool to have like somebody I bump into at Sage 1 year come back and be like demoing a game there the next year. And like, those kind of moments are awesome. So
awesome.
Love them.
I random question that I completely forgot about before. Is there I would assume there is a size limit on the decks, and is there a limit on duplicate cards?
There is no size limit on the deck. Well, technically there is. There is a minimum that you always have. Just because in this game specifically, we avoided putting in the option for players to actually remove cards. You sort of remove cards by refining duplicate cards. So this means that there's a hard limit of having at least 5 to 6 cards in your deck at all times. That's the bare minimum. You can only refine each card once. So basically, you can't keep upgrading a single card into a more powerful variant. It just stops after once. So you will inevitably have your deck grow, but players can theoretically reach 6 cards if they try very hard.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's about trying to grow responsibly, I guess, and balance it between like having good quality stuff and then not too much just generic stuff, unless that's your strategy, maybe. Who knows?
And was there a limit on duplicate cards or not?
No limit on duplicate cards.
Okay.
In fact, some strategies might actually revolve playing multiple of the same card in a turn. So basically, we have one I guess emotion tree, which is called angry. And the idea is that you set yourself on fire, and you do more things based on that. And the idea is that the more fire or melt that you've got on you, the higher damage that comes out. So players may try to use the same card over and over again to build up that melt, to deal excessive amounts of damage and end the fight in one turn. So there are a lot of cards that have been designed to encourage the use of duplicates.
Okay. So at some point you're either going to fail a run or you're going to beat a run. So what happens when you finish a run, and what do you lose out on if you had failed the run instead?
So I guess what happens when you finish a run, you've kind of gone all the way from the surface, you've taken the long way home, and your robot delivers all the scrap. And do I say this or not, Jacko?
I think there's some certain narrative stuff we want to keep close to the chest for the moment to
Okay,
not
narrative
spoil
stuff.
things
Yeah,
for the
I didn't
players.
expect you to get
Yeah.
into that. I was talking more about
Yeah.
resource wise. Like, do you lose out on some of the scrap you collect, or
So the idea is that if you manage to get all the way to the bosses, a lot of your scrap is then transported back home, which means that you can use it to, as I guess, unlocking different perks, different features in the game over time. However, if you don't get to the end of the run, like if you don't get to either any of the bosses or the end of the run, then you'll lose most of the scrap that you have actually collected. So a lot of it is basically rewarding players for making the trip to the boss, beating it, and then moving on to the next act, so that there is actually some progress that does occur. Because, like, essentially, if you're holding around all this money, all this material, if you don't get a spot to the deposit box, it's never going to get back home.
right? Oh, so you can deposit it like along the journey as well. It's not just like right at the end.
This is something that we're hoping to test and plan for, but it is nothing that we have confirmed as of yet. It requires more testing.
Okay.
We got a couple of different options, and we're really trying to make sure we like nail down that bit that actually definitely feels fun. So one of the ones would classically be between acts. It's kind of like a nice break point. It's like kind of a part of that reward of like beating the boss. It's like, okay, cool. How much of my scrap do I want to put back into the bank and say, yep, cool, I've locked that down, and how much do I want available for the rest of the run to be able to kind of go through and have that resource pool to launch into further success. So it's kind of like a choice the player would then have to make. And we just try to like make sure we really get that, whether that's the particular final system we go with, where we don't want to lock that down yet, but that's one of the avenues we're definitely exploring. Yeah.
Right, because there's different ways you can approach this, where some games you'll have like some sort of resource system, and if you fail before the end, then maybe you don't send all of it back, or maybe only to the latest checkpoint you'll send it back. And then there's a game like Hades where like certain kinds of resources you don't get until those later parts of the run anyway, so you actually need to get to those further points, otherwise you're just never going to see them. It's like, what resources are going to exist? Is it just like scrap as a generic resource, or is there different kinds of resources that are like different kinds of scrap, different things you might collect?
Yeah, I mean, so scrap would be the obvious first one. There are other aspects of things like the virus system, where we were talking about that in terms of what that enables kind of in a meta progression sense. That again kind of starts to get into some of those narrative options that unlock, and that necessarily kind of unlocks some other parts of the game that you wouldn't maybe see. But not in like kind of, one of the things we're like hoping to really see if we could get with that is, rather than be like strictly, oh, I've got this resource, therefore this is unlocked kind of thing. It's like, oh, cool. There's now something more I know about the world,
right?
Which means that this other stuff can happen and the world evolves in that natural way a little bit more. So rather than making it some kind of like specific resource per se, that it's like, no, okay, what's going on in the world with these new discoveries?
So besides the narrative stuff, is there plan to have some sort of out of run progression system?
So what we're intending to have as a full release of our game is 3 robots and 3 humans, which gives us 9 different sets. Now, what we want players to do over the course of playing our game is unlock them one by one. So the first time you unlock either the pilot or the new robot, you get an additional 1 deck. But then if you do the other variant, so if you took the pilot, then you get the drone, then you suddenly get 2 decks, and then 3 decks, and then another 3 decks. So that's how we want players to unlock and progress things. We will also be having certain branches of cards not available on your first run. So the more you invest into a certain robot or pilot, the more emotions that they get. So we've done this on purpose to allow people to sort of learn the game as they go, and not to, I guess, overwhelm them with choice at the very beginning, to avoid analysis paralysis.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, one thing we kind of skipped over there is, what does the scrap actually like being used for that you're bringing back? Like, why are you collecting that? Is it narrative, or is it something you can say?
So scrap is more or less used to sort of repair the bunkers underneath. So basically, all the facilities have been running for a while. They need new parts, they need new materials to churn out more robots, to churn out more pieces to help bring the day where humanity kind of wakes up from cryostasis and can return to whatever city is happening. That's the story reason for it. And then the kind of mechanical reason is that it becomes a resource to unlock different things, different perks that are given to the player because they've achieved well in the game. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So part of it's like, management wanting to, give you a little like thanks for keeping going, keep going to do a better job, do a better job, do a better job. Like, trying to bring you into that cycle. Yeah. So that's like definitely one kind of the part there that, yeah, you can see us like holding back on some other narrative stuff. We're like, oh, we want to share it, but yeah, we also want to kind of like let players discover it in the game a little bit as well. So yeah, we're holding that fine line.
So in this combat alpha you're doing, is it just the one set of human and robot you have, or do you have all of the ones you've made so far accessible?
We've decided to only have the first set available, just because it means that the experience we get very specified data on the set, so we get a lot of feedback, we got a lot of testing out, so that when we do move on to the next set, we may opt to switch the pilots over in our convention builds just to make each experience slightly different. So we get we usually hit up Avcon, we usually hit up Sage, and we've hit up PAX. We'll be hitting up PAX again. So we want players that do come back. They get to see different sides of the games as the game progresses. And it just means that we get more direct feedback on one specific set.
Yeah. And so to kind of further on that, like anytime we're running something like an alpha test, we usually want to go into it with specific questions that we want answered. Because otherwise, it's part of it is like it's very cool to just like give players the chance to play the game a bit more, and they're all quite keen for that. So I think we've a big shout out to the community for like just being so enthusiastic about wanting to help us. And yes, we'll give you as much as we can as soon as we can. And yeah, for like the combat alpha specifically, just turns out that the questions we want to answer with it don't necessarily need all of those like in-depth pilots, which means we can kind of cook on that design a bit more until the point where we're ready. Yeah, cool. Okay, this is ready for alpha testers to go nuts with. Basically, yeah.
Are you able to do a? Go on. Sorry.
So you go.
I was going to say, are you able to do a full run during the combat alpha, or is it just like one act that's available?
So particularly in the beginning, particularly in the beginning, one act. And it's one of those ones where realistically, we will probably do like rolling updates as it's going along. We don't have like a fixed thing exactly because we want to see the data before we start committing to like the pieces of it and make sure we're like, okay, cool, that bit's solid. Let's like expand and expand. But yeah, just being able to kind of like tease in some of those next bits that, like, okay, it's one act and then, okay, two acts and so on and so forth, kind of being revealed throughout things. Yeah.
So what is the goal with the combat alpha then? Like, why are you guys doing it? Like, what information are you trying to get out of this?
So, you go.
Oh, okay. So the main one for me would just be that kind of very base UX of it. So the act of literally, okay, I'm playing cards to defeat an enemy.
Right.
Do people find that intuitive? Do they understand, like, when we write stuff on the cards, like the way we're going about writing them, is that something that people are getting, or are they kind of like sitting there just kind of really puzzled by what's going on? Like the targeting indicators, all those like little bits of UX that, this sounds like kind of completely different from like all the gameplay testing side of things, but those have been some of the big blocks that we've been stumbling on throughout some pieces of the development, where we go, oh, we've created this like wonderful system that we originally had like a thing where you could combine cards on the fly. And so there was this like, in your hand, it was like 3 cards and 3 cards in like a 9-grid system. And we're like, okay, I think on paper, this has a bunch of really good things for it. And then you put it in front of a player and it's like the actual user experience is pretty abysmal if you don't know already kind of a lot of the game mechanics. So we were wondering, like, can we teach people this? And I think the answer is just like, no. Like, it's just as a thing that a first time player coming into the game has available to them, that was just too much. And so kind of going back to the drawing board and doing like a more simpler traditional card setup was the right way to go for that. And being able to answer those kind of questions is something we've done in the past. So similarly, coming through this combat alpha, just making sure that the UX, sound effects, the damage indicator coming out for people is something that all feels right as a package.
Right.
So those kind of bits and pieces, that kind of stuff. And then like the set balance and things like that. Having the full cards available. We haven't had that at all the previous conventions. There have been some cards in the set that have been omitted. And so now we're kind of going through, okay, how is this full set balance?
Right, I'm seeing things like in one of the screenshots you guys have here, like there's the energy siphon card, and the siphon part of it is like over the placeholder art you have there. So I guess things like making sure the cards are actually readable as well is like part of that.
Yeah,
definitely. I reckon those website shots are probably due a bit of an update sometime soon.
Yeah, Andrew keeps asking for the updates, and then I'm like, just a little bit more. Give me another couple weeks. But I guess also adding on to it, there are a couple mechanics that we haven't actually tested in public yet, like the overkill and the looting system, because it's not a system that we see very often. We need to sort of gauge what the player base's response is, whether it's clunky, whether it's unintuitive, whether it's unfun. And that will change our design. So a lot of it is also validation of our design. As Jacko said before, we've had very interesting design choices where we tried a little bit to take it too far from what the base experience was of the genre.
How are you?
It's been one of those ones where it's like,
no, sorry.
Like sometimes we're like kids in a candy store, we're like, oh, this would be a cool mechanic, and this would be a cool mechanic, and this would be a cool mechanic, and like some of them is like, oh, okay, you might have to save that for a future game. Like, there's just too much stuff going on here.
How are you currently planning to indicate the overkill? Because obviously 0 is easy enough. They have 0 health, they're dead. But if you are doing the extra damage, is it just like a visual breakdown? Is it some sort of indicator over the top as you're doing that additional damage, or what are you guys thinking for that?
Yeah, so
there you go.
So I was going to say, one of the ones that we're looking at the moment is that underlying all of it, using the kind of similar status system to be able to mediate a lot of it, like the kind of tech background. So that's where I'm jumping in, I guess, like nerdy programmer. But then how we display that is like quite open to like a skull or something like that, kind of going where the shield could be. I think like Leo could probably talk to a bunch of the visual aspects of it a bit more.
So I guess the plan is to have another bar that sort of builds up. So you've got the first health bar that goes down the more damage you deal. Then obviously we have another indicator, an icon, as Jacko said, to indicate that you're now past the point where they are alive. And the bar starts to build up until you hit that maximum, where you've broken them down as much as the system will actually allow. Like, I think while it will be fun to let you continually break down them to infinity and beyond, there needs to be hard limits to everything, which is just part of design. So having a bar-esque is a good and traditional way of demonstrating you've done something, you're hitting the limit.
I'm sure balancing how much would need to be done to keep it like still entertaining would be a bit of a challenge. Like, would you want it to be a additional percentage of their health? Would you want it to be a set number, like just generally a set number? Like, finding what really makes sense there, I'm sure, is going to require going through some of that combat alpha testing.
Oh, absolutely. I think the current status is that we're setting a minimum of what it can be, and then if it exceeds that minimum, it becomes a percentage of the original robot's health. So, like, if they had 15 health to begin with, then it might be 10 damage as a base minimum. But if they have 120, it might be closer to 60.
Right.
But it does require a lot of testing, which is why we want the combat alpha.
Yeah, because you don't want someone to just it to be like, oh well, I've beat this big enemy, and now it's like I have to spend like 3 or 4 turns just breaking it down. It's like, is that fun? Maybe like a couple of times, but does it really work? Well, yeah, that's what the playtesting is for.
Exactly, and like we'd obviously, once all enemies are sort of deactivated, we'd set in maybe one final turn where the players can do so. So they're also going to do it within a specific time limit.
Okay, right, that makes sense. Because yeah, I could see that being a problem otherwise, where like if you just let the player, if you let the player choose when to leave, you will have players that choose not to leave.
Look,
yes.
Honestly, it's a fun game. Then they're enjoying themselves.
Fun is very debatable. This is actually the random other example from another game. I play a lot of Path of Exile. There is a mechanic in that called Delve, and there is this absolute psycho. So Delve is basically like a roguelite system where you go to these different nodes, you get resources at those nodes, and you're basically just going down. The idea is you're going down through this mine shaft. Now, most people, they'll get to like 300-400, maybe 1,000 floors in if they really like Delve. This guy was like, okay, I'm going to get to the limit of Delve, and the limit is the 16-bit integer limit. So he's been doing that for the past 3 months, only doing that mechanic, and I think just today he finally got there. I don't know how many hours. I think it's like 65 days of total game time, something ridiculous like that, just in this one league. So if you let people do something for too long, they will do it for too long. You have at least one person who will spend way too much time doing it.
Hey, congratulations to that guy. You know, that's a service to humanity right there. He's charting the uncharted. You know, we're proud of him.
And I mean, the fact that we're talking about now is also an important thing to note. It becomes a way of people sharing what they do in this game and why they enjoy it. And we may be laughing about it right now, but it is now something that we are talking about. It is a highlight.
Yeah.
So,
no, it's really cool to just let people experience things in their own way as well, I think. Like, kind of part of that discovery thing is like, you know, what's beyond the horizon? You know, even if the answer is, oh, I think I have a pretty good idea, I'm going to hit like the integer overflow or something like that. Like, you know, but I got to try, you know, I got to find out. Like that's like a real human instinct. So I'm like, yeah, that stuff's cool.
I mean, I think the overkill system is the one character I like to reference back to is the question mark in Act 3 of Slay the Spire, where there is an enemy with 999 damage. Now, you don't have to do that 999 damage, but it feels good when you do it. So yeah. I think like you don't actually have to beat them. You don't have to do all the damage to beat them because they self-destruct in 6 turns. But it's just like, oh, can I? It's that same mentality.
Right. No, I get that. No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, okay, so you mentioned you have these different characters. Obviously, if you're going to have different characters, they're going to specialize in different things. What is the one that's in the combat alpha specialized in? And if you want to say what the other characters are all about as well.
Do you want to handle this, Shaka, or should I?
Yeah, so I can do a brief overview of it. So the one we've got in the combat alpha at the moment, and the one you've seen at convention builds, is Hotshot. And so kind of like more of the brash kind of the character that's basically kind of very straightforward and in your face about how they go about life. So it works well for a beginner player, kind of like, okay, I'm just going to go in and hit things. And so like a lot of their kind of personality traits that you can unlock either revolve around honest or something maybe more like unruly or angry or, you know, those other ones. And then there's kind of like the ability to be like kind of like that like gamer insulting kind of thing. Like people can play into that, and each of those has their own mechanics around it. So that's the pilot that we have available there for the first set of things. And we also have the swarm bots, which kind of like these little robots that go out, and Leo's got a whole backstory that maybe we can go into later. But effectively, they're running around the city, kind of like collecting pieces of crap and observing things and seeing what's going on. And so they've got the kind of at the base level the ability to kind of like leap on things and like kind of defend themselves a bit, but also the ability to kind of summon more friends in. And so kind of through power of numbers
card and things like that.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and so through those power of numbers, kind of like beat the enemy through just that, as well as like kind of melting things down a little bit to kind of help bring them back and using that to fight. So those are the kind of two base characters there. And we've got some other card art that some other like kind of key art that I think we've shown around the place that has some of the other characters. And I don't know if you want to talk any bit more about them, Leo?
So I guess I'll talk about the robots first. We've got another class of robot that we're, I guess, codenaming the Observer. And it's sort of like a personal recording companion robot that also acts as like a overseer of what all the other robots were supposed to be doing. And the idea is that they can store energy. So every time they get hit, every time they get attacked, they take damage, they store resource, a status resource that they can expend to do different things in the fights. And they can also record moves, so they can sort of remember the moves that you've played during a combat and recall them up later in the fight.
Okay.
Then the third robot is called the Recycler, and he's supposed to break down other robots, other enemies, and turn them into useful components. This one is more in development and needs a little bit of a review just between us, because the branch that we want to take this is that you can break down robots, you can use the scrap and the metal that you gain from the fight to build different cards for that fight, or even revive dead robots to use as your sort of guide and companion to help fight. So there's more like a summoner class.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, a bit like the necromancer vibe. Yeah.
And then we've got two other pilots that we've got planned. One is called Keeper. He's sort of more like a dad figure. He's the stoic kind of figure that it takes his time, sort of build up energy, build up reserves, build up statuses to sort of finish everything off in one blow. He's very much a defensive character, has like thorns and building up, I guess, cards that become more powerful, growth cards that become more powerful over each fight that you take.
And so it's kind of some of a bit of his theme is, just to jump in there, is like kind of like being a bit of a gardener almost, like really like tendering, like and like that kind of stuff. So that's where that kind of the growth theme comes in from. Yeah.
And then a third character is Fluid, and they're more or less, I guess, we still have a very strong attachment to the original gameplay style that we intended, the 9x9 grid, the 3 cards and 3 cards. So what we hope to have with the Fluid is that we give the players the option to combine cards while they're fighting, so that you can be a very flexible fight depending on what you need. This is most likely going to be the last palette we unlock, so that when players reach Fluid, they sort of have a very good understanding of what you're doing, and then suddenly this becomes super special. They're more like an artist. They're sort of someone that doesn't quite know where they fit in. They're sort of finding their place in this weird world that they've woken up into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you planning to add any additional later on, or are you set on like this is what we're gonna have?
So this is a question of funding and how well the game does.
Fair enough.
Just because the way we set up the system, if we add an additional robot or an additional pilot, we suddenly have to make another 4 sets of moves, I guess 3 sets of moves or 4 sets of moves. And the more we add, the harder it gets to actually make more cards. So it really does depend on how we do as a product. And I have ideas. I haven't shared them with Jacko yet, but I have ideas.
Oh, no, and he's got plenty that he has shared with me, but I know there's always more. This man is not short of those. But yeah, no, it's really cool. Like, yeah, we're hoping everybody loves it as much as we do, because we really want to keep doing things for it. And even then, we'll hopefully be having a bunch of other features that kind of like trickle in throughout the course of like post-release. I'm going to drop a little sprinkle tease for something I want to do is kind of like really nice mod support and things like that. So looking to kind of take some of the dev tools that we have and put them out there for players to use. The degree to which I can really like kind of justify going and making them really user friendly and like to that nth degree that we can put them out for players is basically going to be somewhat dependent on like where we see community support landing. So yeah, that's the kind of shout out there to everybody. I really want to do it. My noble passion project, but yeah, hopefully I can do that.
That's awesome.
And,
hopefully,
like honestly,
Definitely.
Just speaking on that, the way we've done our animations is actually quite flexible in the fact that if I need to add more animations to a robot, it isn't just I need to redraw everything, but I've used sort of like a puppet system. So we've got very 2D models that I can add more animations quite quickly if necessary. So if the game gets popular and specific enemy drones sort of become favorites, people go in and add their own little bits and pieces and jig, I guess, animations to suit what they need. And that would be very basic and the first step for adding more content in.
Because I'm remembering there's I forgot what it's called. Hold on, I'll just find it. Because there's a really popular mod for Slay the Spire where you can play as the monsters.
Slay the Spire Downfall, I believe.
Is that what? Yes. That's the one. Yeah, that like stuff like that is really cool when like the stuff like that becomes possible in the game. Like that's the sort of stuff where like the modders really do some cool stuff.
Yeah, and really letting people get in and mess with the parts of the game that are like the fun parts, basically. So I want to try to make it where possible so that like the rule sets that we're messing with are something that they could kind of take and go mess with their own. So, whether that be like, okay, what cards are available? Sure. Like how did the effects on them work? How is the map being generated? Like all those kind of like little pieces, those like input bits of configuration, and just letting them run wild with as many of those as possible. Whether or not we get to the point of like them generating whole new art assets and stuff like that, that's probably like, there's like a bunch of, then like we'd have to potentially do moderation for it if we wanted to like have some kind of like communal platform for it. Like, it's interesting. So there's like a bunch of thorny issues to like solve there if we want to like really back this as a company. But yeah, like it's very cool, and I really, really want to push down that path. So yeah, hopefully people can let us know if they're super keen for it. We'd always love to hear that from people.
One thing I didn't ask about earlier is when we were talking about like the UI and how information is displayed, like when you have a card that's fairly simple, like I don't know, what's like your basic attack card called? You say leap. Like with a card like that, it's like you bonk the enemy, it does a number of damage. Like, that's easy to explain, but when you have the more complex mechanics, like Melt, for example, how are you planning to display what mechanics like that do to the player? Like, is there going to be some sort of tooltip system? Is there going to be some sort of help system you can see where it lists out all the mechanics?
Yeah, so for that one, we have a tooltip system in the game at the moment. So anytime, some kind of effect like that is being applied to the enemy, if that effect is on top of them, you'll be able to see it like and hover over that like little status icon and get the thing in the very kind of classic thing for the genre. Hopefully we can get like some more like nice visual indicators in there as well, so that you can really see, okay, this has happened, and like a plus melt kind of pops up as it's happening, and just give people a bunch of things to be like, okay, something has happened, and this is the change, and this is a name associated with it, and this is an icon, and they can see that very clearly. And that's a very tactile way of people being able to learn the game by playing rather than necessarily by reading. But then in addition, on the cards, you've got those big, long, like kind of descriptions potentially, and being able to kind of like have like the melt keyword there highlighted, and then a tooltip that pops out that can describe melt over the side if you do want to go read through. And then one of the other things we're looking at as well is potentially just kind of bringing things to a more glyph-based kind of description of the card. So where possible, rather than writing a word, having the pictorial representation of that to really just be a bit more efficient with space and like hone in on people's shape language a bit more than just like so much words being thrown at you.
Right. Because I can imagine some cards, it could... Trying to work out like what you want to actually fit on the card, I can imagine is quite a challenge.
Yeah.
Like you can always make the font smaller, but if you want it to be readable, like you have problems there.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Just yes.
Just,
And even beyond that, there's a certain amount of text you can throw at people, and like even if you tell them like all this stuff in text, like, do they understand what you've said by the time you've used that many words at them with like kind of like this logical twisty stuff? Like some players will love that. Like, the kind of people who are born to go through like
the people who play Yu-Gi-Oh! Who want to read an essay on each of their cards.
Yeah. And then you have like, so I remember some of my earlier ones when I was throwing builds at some of my friends, they would just not read the text. They just wouldn't. And I was like, oh, cool. Do you not understand what the card, like what the text is saying? And I was like, it's like 5 words. And like, they're like, oh, no, I just don't read them. Like, and like these people play roguelike deck builders. Like they enjoy it. It's just like they will learn by playing, which is like a really wild thing for me. Cause like, that's not how I play, but
they just know what the card art means after having used it.
Yeah. And so they might see some of like the numbers or something that pop out there, but like, yeah, it's kind of interesting. And so they're having a blast. So I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, what can we do to help make that like play style and that like approach to games? Like, we could either be like, oh no, we don't like it. I don't know, it doesn't seem productive at all. So we might as well be like, okay, cool. How can we lean into that? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, if people are not going to read the cards, there comes a point where like there's only so much information you can provide, and you can only provide it in so many convenient ways. If people are just not going to look at the information no matter how you present it, at the end of the day, like I don't know what you can do about that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a tough problem. Like, so some of it. This isn't going to be everybody, of course, but so some of it will extend from like accessibility stuff. So people with like various different levels of vision and things like that, they'll see a card and they'll see the text there. They'll just be like, this is actually too, like in like a bunch of the games, this is like too much of a strain for me to actually try to read it in the forms that it's presented. So they'll kind of be able to pick out like a few key bits and pieces, but then like kind of just learn what it does potentially. And so there's like, coming back to that kind of glyph system where, okay, cool. We've just bought ourselves so much more space to be able to just like enlarge things for people now, and be able to like slim down some of those mechanics and find really efficient ways of describing stuff. And then potentially maybe take some of the cards that were really complex and go, this is a really cool effect and like love the theming and all that kind of stuff, but it's just like there's too much going on in this card. It's something for a modder to make for people who want to do that. Potentially, and like, but maybe is that part of our base set? Like all those kind of questions. Yeah.
So you mentioned sorry, go on.
Just adding to the glyphs, also color coding things as friendly as possible. So if it's a defensive effect, we probably try to use blue text. If it does damage, red text, just to make the correlations and links between them a little bit easier. Because even if they're not reading, they may be looking and taking in color. And that's just another layer that we can do to help those, I guess, people that are playing games like that to make those connections.
Yeah. So being able to like not rely necessarily on silhouettes, but also not rely on colors, like having both at all points in time. So we can. Yeah.
So you mentioned accessibility in there. Are you guys having any thoughts about like how you're going to approach that problem? Because obviously that's like a big area, and there's so many different kinds of accessibility that you could look into adopting, and then there's like the time constraint and the money constraint. Like what are you guys at least considering for that?
That's a very broad question because there's a lot of different parts to it. Because there's a lot of different ways of having accessibility problems. At least from speaking on our team broadly, there's a lot of different things that people on our team deal with and process information very differently. Like I myself, when I said that I had eye problems, I developed cataracts a while back. So I very much don't like things with too much detail. And I like to kind of gloss over my words as much as possible just to kind of get things going. I use color, I use different phrasing to sort of build a pattern so people do understand. So we talked about glyphs, we've talked about color. We're trying to make our UI kind of expandable and almost modular in some aspects for us behind the scenes. We're trying to make our text very large as best we can without making it too big. And we're keeping a lot of the UI very simple and also very similar styling so that it becomes clear that this is a UI element versus a visual element, a story, like a aesthetics element.
There's some other parts that are like harder to necessarily do, like in terms of all the dev work that goes into a lot of these. So, for example, stuff like text to speech is one of those things that would be like, oh, cool, that'd be amazing if we could build in support for that. But then, like the actual way you go about doing that, there's like a couple of different options that are all bubbling around in my head, and I wouldn't want to commit to any one of them. But the main thing is just like looking at where that fits into our workload production. It's unfortunate that probably comes at this point in time, like in the kind of like post-release phase of things, which is really unfortunate. I'm not like I want it to be there on like day dot, but just like the way it's like lining up, it probably looks like that would be something I get to be like, okay, cool. Now I get to work on see if there's something I can do to address that for this community, and hopefully at least bring that support there for people who wouldn't otherwise have access at all. So like features like that, it kind of spirals out from there, and some people have things that they can already use to assist themselves, so like magnifiers for different bits of the screen and things like that. And like, potentially looking at like doing filters for different like color patterns where people have particular color blindness, things like that. There's a wide variety there. Having like different input device support as well is one of those ones where we're kind of interested in.
Because I know you guys are planning to support Switch, so I'd assume that the PC version is going to have controller support as well. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't do that if you're going to go Switch at some point in the future.
Yeah, so controller support is one of those things that we definitely want to make sure we get in there once we've got the UI like kind of locked down a bit in terms of what we want to do with mouse and keyboard. We've been like kind of iterating with it in mind all the way through. The primary one for PC is kind of definitely looking at the mouse and keyboard, particularly mouse driven. Keyboard support obviously to accelerate, but like you should be able to play with just a mouse and not have any issues. And then hopefully that's one of those ones where like once you start targeting those little bits and pieces, there are some of the third party like providers that will get provide things for whoever has whatever kind of accessibility needs. Those devices will work with those kind of frameworks.
Right.
Actually, I saw, what was it? I'm not sure if you would have seen the Neuralink guy recently.
Him just playing Civ?
Yeah, just with its mind. So like stuff like that, that's just using the old mouse and keyboard stuff. So you can go a long way with some of those. Kind of crazy, but so hopefully we can support a broad range of things.
A lot of the like esoteric devices basically just hook into controller support anyway. So if that's there, like usually like that gets you most of the way there. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, and so we're pretty like hopeful that we can be able to get all of that in for release and stuff like that. Yeah, that shouldn't be too much of a challenge. I would have thought. Yeah.
So I did mention that you guys are planning to do that Switch support as well. That obviously adds a lot of additional work on top of just doing PC.
Yeah, so the Switch support is potentially a conditional one.
Okay.
It's not our first choice there. We'd be looking at how dev timelines work for that.
Sure,
it's something where we really do want to bring it to Switch. But yeah, we've kind of been saying like Switch asterisk, I think.
Right.
Bit of the phrasing.
I mean, it's like the whole point of the whole process of localizing a game. It would be great for accessibility and reaching a wider audience, but it is a contingency based on a lot of different things. And obviously out there are a lot of different translation and porting companies that we may end up resorting to. But as our first game, we hope to not do a multi-platform ship. We want to focus on the PC, Linux, and sort of that Steam ecosystem really to make sure that we nail it the first time and that we don't have too many issues to deal with at launch. There will be many here and there that will pop up unexpectedly, but we don't want to add complications to that if we can.
Because I did see, there was a lot of people at AvCon where like it was their first game, and in many cases like it was like a one-person team, and it's like, I want to target PC, mobile, and all the consoles. Like, okay, like that's great, but like keep in mind that like that's a lot of work. Like, release a game, make the game first, and then like post-launch, or if you're able to get a team, or if you're able to get like a porting studio, like, you know, don't overwhelm yourself with all of this additional work before you even got the game itself made.
Yeah, so that's one of the ones in some of the work I used to do for the defense contract research stuff. You know, they wanted us to do heterogeneous compute, so it should run on Mac, Linux, Windows. We want to offload code to the GPU. Okay, that should just natively handle that in code generation. Oh, well, love that. Okay. Oh, how about FPGAs? Like, you know, we're not like you just get like interested. Like, and it was a very fun project, like, because you just got to do all this random esoteric stuff with like kids in a playground sometimes, and that was amazing. But yeah, the just like that kind of level of heterogeneous support has told me, okay, cool. Scope your like priorities for delivering. Okay, we're already supporting 3 different platforms like Windows, Linux, Mac. Like, let's nail that down first. Yeah.
So with Fox and Shadow, are you guys just planning to target a Windows release, or are you planning to do Mac and Linux releases as well?
Mac and Linux releases as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
We try to get people in the team also like daily driving those platforms. So that's like me at the moment. I'm doing the Mac daily drive, and then Lynn has been doing the kind of like more of a Linux push there. I can't remember what distro they're on at the moment. Yeah, so you know, just trying to make sure that like when we run into stuff like, oh cool, like some of our shader things seem to just come out black on like Vulkan for some reason. Okay, who messed this up? It's like, oh no, it's just a Linux thing. Oh, okay, all right. Like we can go in and like see if we can fix that. And like having that consistently all throughout the dev process, rather than trying to fit it in at the end somehow, has been one of those ones for me. Like, yeah, I guess just based on like past experiences, like, yeah, you want to know the problems early. Just be like your users, right? Like if we want to support people who might play on a Mac, which is totally fine, there's no reason our game shouldn't run on a Mac, then yeah, like one of us should be a Mac user. It's like just being representative of your player base is where we can. Yeah.
Yeah, this not doing that is a problem I see from a lot of other games that do have, especially the Linux support. Like a lot of time you'll see a company where like, we exported our game with the Linux build, but they never properly tested it. They don't have anyone on the team that is a Linux expert or knows anything about Linux. And yes, your game technically runs, but like there's all of these additional bugs that nobody on the team knows how to fix, nobody in the team knows exist. And yeah, often in those cases especially, it's better to just not even bother adding the Linux support natively and just rely on what Valve is doing with Wine and Proton. Because oftentimes, bad Linux support is worse than just letting the open source stuff fix it for you. Yeah.
And it could be a rough one like that. So that's where like trying to have at least a couple of different distributions and people who have like kind of dived into stuff and lived it firsthand. And I mean, yeah, even then you still run into the problem of like, oh, it works on my machine. like that kind of thing. And that's where like kind of like trying to get some of the alpha testers to at least be like, oh, okay, cool. Linux though, like, and I know I've got a couple of people who are already like kind of chomping at the bit for some of that stuff, and see what their esoteric setups do to our poor build. And then, yeah, if it turns out it's just like not viable for us as a company or something like that, and we're just running into way too much stuff, because fundamentally, we're going through the Unity pipeline of things. So, we're hopeful that it should all work out pretty well, but we're not going to push broken, buggy stuff on consumers.
Yes,
Definitely not the idea.
Yeah, the other problem you see is games that let one of their builds get out of sync. Like Rocket League was really bad with this early on, and they had no excuse for it. Like Rocket League is Rocket League. They have a lot of money. They could have supported it properly if they wanted to. But they had the Windows version, works great. They had the Mac version, works great. Then they had a Linux port, but they didn't properly support it. They let it get out of sync with the other releases, and because it's out of sync, now it doesn't work with the multiplayer, so now you've lost the main reason to play Rocket League, and it's like the port, there was no reason for it to still exist because it basically didn't work. There are other games that this has happened to in the past as well, like Torchlight. I believe the original Torchlight might have happened with, where it just didn't work anymore on Linux because they'd also built it around like a 10-year-old version and it didn't run on modern versions. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a rabbit hole as well. And that's one of those ones where I think was like, if you want to support it, I mean, I guess the step one is at least being like very honest about, okay, what do we actually know that it runs on and works with? Like, what are our parameters, like a dev team, for what we can be like, yes, cool, this is supported, and anything else beyond that, like, good luck. So yeah, at least if we can try to be clear with the player base on that, that's my hope that we can do that. But then, it's also a question of like, how easily does Steam let you signpost that to people? So yeah, and how easy is it to communicate the nuance? Yeah,
right. And then if something does go wrong and like you guys can't keep it up, just be honest about the state it's in. Like, yeah, we know it doesn't work anymore. Like, we're just gonna get rid of it. Like, I know people liked it and all that, but like, we can't keep this up, basically. Rather than keeping something dead around until the end of time.
Yeah, put it out of its misery.
Exactly. So
yeah.
What was the response like that you got from, I guess, from both Sage and from Avcon?
I think what we've been noticing over the years is that a lot of people are drawn to the arts first. And then once they get into the game, they sort of have fun. And a lot of the players that are of the deck building genre, of the deck building fan base, they very much appreciate the ability to have choice between their cards. And at first, people didn't quite understand what was going on. If we didn't catch them right after they did the first battle and say, oh, hey, check this out. Some people did miss it, but as we've gone along with development and actually put tutorials in, better UI, this problem has been going away. So it's been very much a useful retrospective to compare how we do between cons and the feedback we get. Because if we gain the same feedback over and over again, that means we haven't addressed the issue. But if we're not, and we gain praise for different parts of things, it means that we are making good steps forward. But it's been generally positive.
Yeah, I mean, one of the cool things for me has been having players who do come back to the booth and play the game like every year, which is like, it's kind of wild. The first time I think we had somebody rock up at an AvCon, I think it was on like the Sunday morning or something. It was like 10 a.m. Usually it's like kind of like a little bit dead at that point in time. We're back at the convention center, particularly the first year back. And so for whatever reason, like some guy like just rocked up and sat down and like just played Fox and Shadow for an hour. And we didn't have to like kind of move him on or anything because it was like, we have the free seats. So like, you just play as long as you like please go for it. And just having somebody actually sit down and do that is incredibly rewarding, like as a dev, because basically, oh, okay, cool. Like people care. Like very, very nice. So yeah. And
weirdly enough, that happened again this year too.
Yeah. Awesome. Must be one of those ones where I stepped away from the booth for a bit. But yeah, it's just awesome that like to both get that feedback, but then be able to see, okay, what is it that's like dragging people in? And then, yeah, people like kind of jumping in and joining the Discord and all that kind of stuff, and wanting to know more and just like checking in on the state of dev and stuff like that. Yeah, really kind of keep us going. Yes, okay, cool. Like we need to make sure we're giving these people some more stuff to come with soon. Yeah.
So, did you guys notice any sort of new issues you weren't aware of from that testing at AvCon, or was what you're showing off like polished enough where it's not going to just suddenly light on fire if someone does something that you didn't expect?
I don't think, thanks to Jacko being fairly thorough with all the programming and setup of how we've been developing our project, we haven't actually encountered that crash. And my headset just died.
Oh.
Any fatal crashes. I hope you guys can still hear me.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we got you. We got you.
But more or less, it was actually the first time that we started showing off our music at the conventions. Because previously, we've always had the sound on mute, just because a lot of the build up, the pieces weren't quite finished at previous conventions. So we had it this time playing at on the TV behind us. So it gave us a lot of feedback on how all the sound effects worked, whether or not the soundtracks were nice or whether or not they became grating after time. But I can say it was really good to experience. How long was AvCon?
Oh, it was like 2 days for the total part.
Yeah.
But like, yeah.
How was
I mean,
6 hours?
Yeah, 10 to 5, not 10 to 5, something like that, 10 to 6ish.
Yeah, so a good 7
Yeah.
hours of hearing the music.
kind of
and not going
extended out the
crazy.
back a bit. Yeah.
Well, Saturday, I don't know. Were you guys still around on like after dark?
After
Or did you
dark?
guys leave?
No,
Okay.
we didn't do that this time around.
Because I know there were
Yeah.
some people there that were there till like 10 o'clock showing off stuff.
Yeah, monster effort. Good
Yeah,
on
it
them.
was Saturday was a very long day.
Yeah. I mean, the sound stuff's interesting as well, right? Because it gives you a different perspective than like obviously what like the sit down at home experience would be with like some speakers or like headphones in your own private room. So it lets you kind of almost stress test certain parts of the audio, if that makes sense. Like you're at a busy convention floor, like, okay, in this situation, what actually happens? And you can, it's not necessarily super representative of the final like player experience we're actually expecting, but there are some interesting stuff there. Like I think it's useful for our composers to be able to like hear that. We got a few like minor little bug notifications here and there, like little bits of like statuses that were like, oh, I expected to do this and it kind of did that, but like this. And then you go, oh, okay, yeah. Gotcha. We'll like patch that. But yeah, like Leo said, if we're going to bring something to a convention, we don't want it crashing. That's kind of like rule one is like, everything should be stable. Whether or not like some of the gameplay stuff is like a little bit like unintuitive or doesn't quite line up right, okay, like there'll be like a few bugs there as well, like iterating on development, but like, yeah, the core engine needs to be, good. Yeah. And like, apart from that, it's like some of the really good feedback is just people sharing their experience of it. So, like, because that's the key thing at the end, right? It's like, are people having fun or not? And so like us being able to answer that question or like them sharing their view on it is like, yeah, always really good feedback.
It's also good to show where we need to focus more efforts on in our development, whether it's to show more of the story, whether or not our narrative length is too long. And it's just all these little pieces that we overlook after staring at the project for too long. So it's like always a good reminder of what we need to change and fix and update.
Like on the narrative one. Oh, sorry. On the narrative one, there was one of the little tiny tests we were running was just like, oh, okay, let's give players the ability to respond with basically the same response, but just change the way they'd phrase it. And like see if we could use that to kind of draw them down a different path and like kind of like treat that as a bit of a learning exercise. And we found that some players like kind of got it and like ran with it. Some players didn't really understand, but just like kind of skimmed through it because narrative, whatever, like blah, 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 blah. And then some players just sat there and like would kind of like look back at us like a deer in the headlights being like, oh no, what should I pick? Because like they didn't really feel like they had the context to make that decision that early in the game. And that was like a very interesting one for us because we're like, okay, cool. Like the best way for us to find out how players will approach this thing is to be like, okay, so what do players do when we give it to them? And yeah, being there at the time as well is very useful to be able to like get that I kind of like qualitative, like that emotional thing out of them, and they like their natural response. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, like the the people who skip every bit of text, like again, what I was saying before, if you don't read the text, like you can't help those people. Like there are some people who doesn't matter what the game is, like story, not game, don't care, ignore it. I'm gonna play the game now. Like it, you can put them in front of a JRPG that's like 50 hours of cutscenes, like skip, like not my problem. I'm gonna play the game. Yeah.
To each their own, to each their own. Also trying to do what you can to make sure that, whoever is downloading, like, there are limits to what you can do to like still like they're kind of opting out of a bunch of things, so like let them opt out, I guess, where we can. But still hopefully have them have a fun experience at the end of the day. Our aim is not to necessarily shove the narrative down their throat or anything. Like if they want to opt out, they'll probably miss out on a bunch of the experience, but through their own choice, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we've done little bits and pieces to make sure that people that just want to experience the combat gameplay have the option to always just attack whoever they're talking to. That is always an option. But it's probably not going to end up being the most rewarding of those paths. But it is an option.
Well, that's actually kind of fun. I like that idea. What I was gonna say before is, I've been going to AvCon for probably close to 5-6 years now. And I've noticed that over the years, the quality of games that have been shown off has been going up each year. Obviously, there was that like break during COVID, so a lot of people had a lot of time to work on stuff during that, which is awesome. And it's probably a big part of the reason why, like now, like last year and then this year, like people who got a chance to work on stuff during that, like the quality is like way higher. But I remember back in 2018 where there were a lot of demos there where they didn't have that like level of like con polish where you could get them to crash fairly reasonably. They would have very easy to access like game breaking bugs. I don't know. It's nice to see that there is this game development scene developing in South Australia where that really it did exist in the early 2000s, but after like the global financial crisis, a lot of stuff completely died then, and it's taken a while for stuff to really like ramp back up and actually see not just a game development scene in SA, but really like an Australia-wide game development scene.
I think at least in Adelaide, most of us game devs are actually connected in some way, where there's a friend of a friend, or we're very much a tight-knit community, and we try to help each other where we can. And that means once one game dev and one studio starts to develop at a different level, they also bring all the other studios to come up with us. There's also been a lot of support that we get from other government bodies, particularly Screen Australia as of late, with their games expansion funds, which has actually provided a lot of devs with the funds they need to actually get started and hopefully attract publishers. So I think between that and events like GCAP and all the ease of communication these days, the level has just been growing at a, I guess, really steady and great pace.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Like there's like certainly feels like there's a bit of maturity in the industry, like particularly once you get stuff like having the big success like Hollow Knight and all that kind of stuff, and that all like building a lot of steam behind things means that like then government can start looking and going, oh yeah, like we do want to support this industry and we do believe in its future. And so that's been really cool. I mean, like on the AvCon one specifically, I actually have a soft spot for the AvCon kind of like, hey, it's crashing, but I brought it anyway kind of vibe.
Right.
I'd be sad if that left. That's just me personally. Maybe everybody else feels different, but I really like the fact that I can go to like all the devs around the space and be like, oh no, don't be scared. Show your thing at AvCon. Maybe it's not as polished as you'd like or whatever, but it's never going to be as polished as you like. put it in front of some players. Please put it in front of some players.
I think part
and,
of that is not
everybody
having
will.
the same like barrier that exists with like going to PAX, because like PAX is very
Yeah,
expensive to go to.
definitely. And I think like previously as well, it also kind of had a bit of that like the way it was set up in the convention center was like a bit cloistered off.
Mm.
It was kind of like its own little cave that you go into and all that kind of stuff. Whereas like now in the last one, we've got like all these massive screens provided and all that kind of stuff. So that was like really cool as like a leveling up of the setup there. Yeah, so big shout out to the organization this year. And yeah, like that has been very cool to see. But yes, I still kind of really do want to make sure that it's one of those ones where I can tell people like, hey, bring it there. It's so much better to have a like some kind of experience there that people can like stumble across.
Right.
Just because like one of the ones I remember from my Cryon days back when we were doing that was having that like ARPG, and we'd have a build running on phones or like that, and then like throughout the con I'd just be there on my laptop like completely deving, and somebody'd be like, "Oh, I wish this worked like this," and I'd be like, "Okay, yeah, on it." Like just like doing that with the idea that if they came back the second day, they would see that change in there, or maybe even like later that afternoon. Really just going, okay, like we're here to interact with the people at the convention as much as possible. And there's a balance between that and like having a stable build, right?
Sure.
Like, so yeah, sometimes that's just like really fun to roll with that vibe and work at that level. So yeah, I kind of, I don't know. I don't want to advocate it because it's hectic. It's really hectic to do that, but at the same time, quite fun.
I think at least do it once.
Yeah.
You mentioned that. I know that he shouldn't have been doing this because he was already aware there were issues with it. But Dan from End of Ember, he was working on a build like the day of, and like they're like they've got like a programmer guy now, and he's like, "Can you like not do that right now?" Like we've got it in a state where it's good. Just don't touch it.
Yeah, I think there's like there's a key part there, which is like whatever your like architectural setup is, because I think Dan's one is definitely coming in from that kind of like artist vibe of things, where he's like, okay, I've got these things and like I've got them in the game and they're working together. I've seen around the space before, and I've like seen some of the problems he gets to like run into, which is like, okay, cool. It looks like it's working. It's all working together. And even like other game devs can have this problem as well from the programming background. But like, are the core systems good? Like, are they all working together in a way that protects you basically, so that like when you get that fault at the higher level, it kind of gets caught in the lower level and doesn't propagate further. And you don't get into like soft locks and all those kind of things. Like what is there to prevent that? Who's like thought through from that level? So if you can answer those questions beforehand, it's really cool because it means you can get into the con and like just dev with a lot more freedom if you want to. So a big shout out to that kind of line of thinking. But yeah, again, to each their own,
Yeah, for sure.
I can sort of speak to the last minute changes on doing things because like I very much, as one of the artists and the ones kind of working on the visual side of things, I'm always like, oh, this needs to look right, this needs to look perfect, then never going to look at it again if I don't get this right. And you kind of get into this like really narrow mindset, this tunnel vision of not looking at the product as a whole. You only look at your section, and you kind of forget that any changes that you do make could actually mess something up really irreparably, and you could end up with a bad build. So I think that just comes with experiencing and knowing that even if it's not where you wished it would be, it's still good. There is still value in having it seen and having the feedback that you get from it. It's not your release build. Like it might be like your actual release build, but in most cases, it's not your final build. You'll get to work on it later, and you're better off having energy to attend the convention and enjoy yourself, bask in what you've made, bask in what you've achieved. So I think working at the con, while it seems like a good idea, in hindsight, you're better off just taking what you can that you can only get out of con, the experience with players.
Yeah, if you're going to do it, you need a team around you. you cannot be a solo dev doing. Oh, okay. I'm sure there's going to be the exception to the rule, right? But like, yeah, I remember like going, okay, I'm going to like take a break and like nap down here. Don't mind me now. Like, you know, it was that kind of like stage of like fresh out of uni programmer life, that you could like just kind of roll like that. But yeah, like as you can tell, I'm not doing it at these conventions. I think like, you know, stable, prepared, not allowed. There we go. Boss says no.
Well, on that note, I think that's as good of a message to end on as we possibly could. So let people know where they can find the studio, find the game, get involved in any community you might have, and all the other stuff you want to direct people to.
So we're based in Adelaide, hurrah! But the easiest place to find us is through our website, www.papercactusgames.com. On that side has linked to all our socials, and it's probably the best place to find us. The easiest place to communicate with us is through our Discord, which is a link on the website, or through, I guess, Twitter, kind of. It's a weird place to exist on right now with Twitter. But yeah, go to our website, the easiest place to find us and find out more about us.
One little question: when is there going to be footage of the game on your YouTube channel?
So currently, I'm working on a small little animatic.
Okay.
So I want that done at the very least. And then I will get some gameplay footage and splice together a trailer and go from there.
Okay.
We've been very, at least from a marketing perspective, I've been holding off on the videos until we have a very good representation of our product to avoid shooting ourselves in the foot, more or less. Okay. But yeah, I am keen for that to happen.
Okay. Was there anything that was missed there, Jackson? Anything you want to direct people to that was not mentioned?
No, I think that should be good. You know, we've also got like a couple of the other platforms that you'd expect, so like Instagram and all of that. But yeah, we're mainly looking for that like website one. And we have a newsletter if you want to sign up for that as well.
Yes.
You can find that at the bottom of the website.
Yes.
Sweet. Nothing else? Are you guys going to be at a con anytime later in the year? Or is it pretty much done for the year?
So we'll be going to PAX this year, and South by Southwest. So we've got a booth at PAX, and we'll be demoing along with the game showcase at South by Southwest. Those are the major public appearances that we're doing that are open to main consumers.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And also, we will be at Gamescom later, you know, coming up in August, but we're not there kind of like showing off the game or anything like that. We're just there kind of attending and doing business talk stuff and all that kind of fun thing. But I don't know, feel free to drop us a line and say hi if you're around.
Awesome. Is that everything then? Nothing else?
Yeah, I think that should be it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we'll do my outro and then we'll sign off. So my main channel is Brody Robertson. I do Linux videos there 6-ish days a week. Check it out. See what's over there. I've got my gaming channel, Brody on Games. Right now, I'm probably still playing through Devil May Cry 4. And I don't know, maybe I'm going to play the Path of Exile League on stream. Check it out. See what's over there. I don't know, maybe I'll do something. I don't know, find it out. Anyway, if you're listening to the audio version of this, you can find the video version on YouTube at Tech Over Tea. If you want to find the audio release, it is on every podcast platform. Search Tech Over Tea. There is an RSS feed. Put it into your favorite app and you'll be good to go. How do you want to sign us off? I never tell people they're doing this. It's always fun.
Oh, I love that. Everybody, if you can make games, make cool games. If you haven't tried making games, make cool games. Do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. As long as you've got a passion for things, you can make it happen. It just takes a lot of hard work.
You know, that's perfect. Sweet. Right.